What's up, everybody? This video is from BigMick00. He's playing 4 tables of NL50, not sure on one site. And right off the bat, it looks like we had one big blind in this top table. A short stack guy, he's got less than 40 blinds, limped in front of us, and we have 7-8 offsuit. I don't like the isolate there. Like, I think our hands are just a little bit too weak. We don't have any reads on the guy. The HUD has only just come up. But I'd rather have a hand that can make some top pairs. Something suited. Something with a little more potential. That's a little bit too weak there. It's not so great. Let's see here. We flop open-ended, which is a pretty easy bet. And then he makes a monster raise, which we have to hold to. Okay, with Queen 5 suited on the button here, like, I'll raise this hand sometimes, but it's dependent on who's in the blind. I'm looking at this Baltro guy. According to this, he folds to steal 78% of the time, so that's good. But the other guy, this 43-18 short stack guy, he folds to steal only 40% of the time, so not so good. And I mean, we do have a little bit of a playable hand. But just two things. Like, one, we don't have, we're not immediately profitable, obviously, because the big blind is calling us a ton. The good news is that he's bad. The bad news is that he's short stacked. So we're going to have less advantage. Our positional advantage isn't worth nearly as much as if he had more money, because, fish overvalue, when they hit pairs, draws, or whatever. But the shorter stacks get, the more correct their fishy ways become. Like their mistakes are minimalized when their stack is short. So it really lowers our profit. That's based on position, because, the advantage of our position is less. So I don't really like that open too much. That's probably a little bit too loose also. We 3-bet some guy with an ace, 21-13 guys cut off open with an ace king. That's pretty standard, obviously. And with the queen 9, I like that isolate much more than with the 7-8. You can make some top pairs in position versus a bad player. I think that's fine from the cutoff. And we get called twice, and we get a total disaster board. We have second pair, but obviously, these guys are continuing a lot, and your equity is going to kind of suck against what they continue with, even though you have something. And then on the turn, it gets even worse, because now there's a million not just hands that they call with, but just one card that they call with. So no, I hate that bluff. That's just not going to work nearly often enough versus 2 fish on that board. I mean, it works that time, but I'm pretty sure that that's not going to be profitable in the long run. The software is great. They the manual reloads and the table loading and all that. That's fantastic. Okay, in the lower left, got a pretty normalist looking red guy. He's 2014, full do 3-bet of 67. He makes a 2.5 times raise with 5-5, and it looks like we're warming up a 3-bet. Stop it right there. I don't like this play. Like, for one, even if he raises to 3x, when you're on the big blind, like, unless they're like a super badass player, you can usually call profitably there against most guys, even though you're out of position. Like, you get good odds. His range isn't really all that strong, which is fine. Like, you don't have to have huge implied odds on the times you hit a set to be able to play profitably. You can, sometimes you're going to get the showdown ahead. Sometimes, it's easier to bluff against weak ranges. Like, if you play decently, you can make a profit there against even a 3x range. I can see folding it against a 3x raise, just because it misses a lot of flops and you're out of position or whatever. Like, if you don't think you can play it well enough, I can see folding there. But when the guy makes it 2.5, like, that's that's one of the downsides to this small button raise, is that the player in the big blind, and, it has an upside too, but I'm not going to get into that because it's a totally different subject. But you should definitely be calling his 2.5 size raise with more hands than you would call his 3x raise. And 5-5 is one, like, it's an easy profit when it's one, or when it's just 75 cents more to call and you've got 50, and it's a very easy profitable. So there's no reason you have to 3-bet there. In this hand, like, I'm folding this hand before I'm 3-betting it out of position anyway. Like, even when it's profitable, like, the situation will come up frequently enough that it makes a difference which hands we choose to 3-bet, and these are, like, at the bottom of the list, other than, like, super junk. Like, we'd rather have something like an ace that can block things that he continues with, or some kind of connectors suited, something that hits some flops. This just, like, almost always misses a flop and plays really bad out of position, and the value of the set isn't nearly as great. I mean, sure, it's great when you hit it, but it's not such a big deal when stacks are short enough that like, just making top pair will get somebody stacked. You know what I mean? So I really don't like that play at all. Okay, here in the lower right hand, it's kind of an awkward spot. We've got pocket tens. The button, who is 2917, may or may not be fishy. That looks a little bit fishy, but it's definitely not like 45 or something. Anyway, his button raised gets 3-bet by the small blind, who's totally unknown. He's only been here for one hand, and we have tens. Now, I would say, like, most micro stakes games, this should probably just be a fold. And it just depends on what you think about the games in general. Like, you have to make a guess about, how much an unknown player is 3-betting. And, I think in most of these games, they're not 3-betting enough that you're going to profit here, calling with tens. I mean, the more aggressive the games get, like if the default average unknown player is 3-betting here wide enough, like the games are super aggressive, a lot of times you would be able to call profitably, even though your hand is kind of face up, just because tens would be so well ahead of their range. And in super duper aggressive games, where people don't just, like, 3-bet with a bunch but only get it in with super good hands, in really aggressive games, you 100 blinds deep, a lot of times you could just, like, 4-bet call here with tens. And I think in most micro stakes games, you should just be folding there. Looking around at these tables, there are a lot of aggressive looking regs, but there's still also like a decent amount of like fishy looking guys and guys that aren't super aggressive, so I'm probably just folding there. I'm definitely not like 4-bet getting it in, but I think it's probably a clear fold, with calling being a second choice and 4-betting being like, no, don't ever do that. And so we do call, and the flop comes Jack 5-5. It's like super blank, super dry flop, and this guy c-bets into us. And you know, my opinion on this is that against the player type, I mean, if he's a fish, like if he's some aggro fish, he's just like betting every single flop anyway, because that's what aggro fish do. He's not thinking about what you have. But if he's a regular, which quite often he will be, I think most regulars at these stakes, like, even though your range is like very well defined when you cold call his 3-bet like that to hands like what you have, and maybe sometimes like ace queen, ace king, like this is a flop that if you thought about it, you're not folding a ton. But the thing of it is, I think most regs at these stakes aren't thinking about it a ton. They're pretty bad about c-betting too much. So I mean, I would probably call the flop and expect him to quite often play fairly straightforwardly on the turn after you do call, if he is a regular, just because you know, unless the turn is an overcard or something, he probably wouldn't expect you to fold a whole lot. But I'm not really scared of his range on the flop. Like, I'm still expecting regulars to c-bet here, you know, with all of their air, all their ace king, ace queen, whatever, even though it might not be a great play if you thought about your range. Okay, so he does c-bet, we do call. The turn is a break. And he does check, which brings up an interesting spot. This is one of those kind of spots where it's like, there isn't a ton of value in betting. You know, usually he just has a worse hand and he's folding. Like, so you have to think, you know, which is worse. Like, you know, once in a while he will be checking, you know, being sneaky or something with a good hand. And once in a while he'll call with a worse hand. But the thing of it is, like people will surprise you with what they call with a lot more than, you know, him having kings or something. I think there are enough, you know, he'll have 2 overcards to our hand enough that it's probably, like, even though he's not calling us with a worse hand a ton, it's probably worth betting here to keep him from free rolling us. And sometimes people will surprise you. Sometimes he will have like 7s or something. Sometimes he will call you with ace king just being a tard. And plus, he's not always a regular. Sometimes he's just like some total idiot fish that, you know, who knows what he's going to do. So I like betting there more than I like checking, but I agree that it's kind of a little bit of an awkward spot. And we do check behind. Kind of a bad card comes on the river. You know, it does hit some of the stuff that he checks with on the turn. It's one that someone could potentially bluff, but I would probably still, you know, if you bet the river, it's close, but he doesn't bet and we check, and he has king queen. I probably would have folded if he bet the river though. Man, these tables are so weird. Like, I'm not sure. Are these all supposed to be 6-max tables, or are they like full ring tables that not everybody sat in? It's like a. I'm gonna stop this for a second. There's just like a random like cluster of people in different patterns on each table. It's like really annoying to like try and. I mean, I realize it's not the poster's fault, but just whoever designed this software, you could just die. Okay, but anyway, that's not the reason I stopped it. The reason I stopped it is we check on the small blind 4-9 offsuit. We flop an open ender. There's 2 people in here, and we're betting because we have an open ender. But this is like about the weakest an open ender can be. There's 2 other people in the pot. You don't really have fold equity on this board versus what these guys are limping in with. I mean, there's so many like, you know, this is the middling board, all 3 connected. It just hits so many like zillions of hands that people limp complete blind with. Like, the odds of both of these guys folding is like almost nothing. Plus you have the kind of draw that when you do hit it, it doesn't always get paid big because it's such a very obvious draw. You know, 4-2 on the board. And it'll split a lot versus you know, hands that are ahead of you now, even you know, like if they have a 7-9 or whatever. So I really don't like that. I think it's basically just kind of putting in money behind because you know, you just don't have any fold equity to go with your draw, and your draw isn't the greatest either. So I'm not in love with that. Once you do get called by this guy who's played 1 hand out of 14, like betting the turn is pretty hopeless. Like, I can't think of any hands that I'm expecting him to call with on the flop. I mean, because there's another guy in the hand too when he called on the flop. So out of all the hands he calls with on the flop, which are mostly like connecty kind of stuff that hits this board, like it all has, you know, pairs, straight draws, or whatever. You know, he's not folding any of that on the turn. And you know, you get a little lucky to get an ace on the river, and then maybe it makes triple barreling okay. But you know, you're not usually. I don't know. You're just getting called so much on the turn that I don't like betting turn with the plan of triple barreling. You know, most rivers. I think you're just getting called like way too much here. So you know, overall, I think that hand is pretty spewy. The river bet might be all right versus this type player. You know, just because at that point he will have a lot of kind of weak one pair hands. You know, you can have an ace. You know, you could have. Well, I don't know. He's probably not thinking about that ton anyway. There really aren't a lot of aces you can have there either. But it still like makes him not like his hand as much if he has some kind of a pair plus straight draw that didn't improve. But I still just don't like that hand very much. I also hate you can't ever see anybody's name unless they only have like a few letters in their name. Everybody is like Drift ... You can't even see a guy's name. I mean, you'd be able to see your name if they would like space people out instead of like having 5 people clustered around one side of a virtual table for no reason. I'd like to know the thinking behind that. If someone could help me out. Maybe there's actually like 12 places you can sit, but it's capped at 6, just to give people more variety in how they can sit around the table or something. I mean, that seems fairly ridiculous. the seats are just like randomly generated to make it harder for people with screen scraping software. That seems like also not the most ingenious idea. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no logical explanation. Anyway, very easy raise versus this fish when he limps a small blind. We flop with flush draw. Even though we hit this a lot, obviously we have way more than enough equity to bet there. Okay, with fours in the big blind here, you got a 70-36 guy calling on the button. That's a pretty easy set mine with a big fish in there. It's kind of interesting when this flop comes, Queen 7-7 with 2 hearts. This misses both of these guys quite frequently. It's worth considering just donking out there to put the squeeze on the cutoff. Like, from his point of view, even if you just had a queen jack or something, you might be betting just because there's a 70, betting for value because there's a 70-36 guy in there and you didn't want to miss value. It's close though because this guy, the 70-36 guy, his fold to c bet is only 39 at this point. Although on this board, like even somebody that is kind of stubborn, like when you bet into a three-way pot, they're probably not going to call you with ace high, which is like way up in his range. So, I don't mind just check folding. That's pretty standard. But I think it's worth considering, like in spots like these where it's multi-way and you can very easily be seen as value betting, and it's very likely that everybody misses. They can definitely look for some spots like that to stab. Even when there is a fishy player in there. Sometimes. Like I say, this one's borderline, but okay, in the upper left with flop top pair three-way, that's a pretty easy bet. With the jack nine suited in the lower right, I don't mind that 3-bet versus like this tight unknown guy so far. We don't know how much he folds to him, but you don't have quite a strong enough hand to call with. You don't have any history, so he's probably, he's tight. He's probably not gonna go crazy. Usually he's gonna be folding quite a bit of his range there, so I think that's okay. Okay, you get called by one guy on the top left. You should still be betting the turn there, even though like the 10 does hit some of his range. Like it hits 9, 10 and hands like that that have some kind of straight draw, maybe picked up a pair or whatever. But you're still going to be, this guy's 61, 22. He's playing every ace. There's a ton of different ways that he can make a pair there that he's going to call with way too much or have some sort of weak draw. Like, even though the 10 helps his range a little bit, like it doesn't help it enough that I wouldn't be value betting there. There's just too many draws and worse pairs he can call with. Okay, with the queen 10 in the small blind, 70-36 guy limps in, lower left. Yeah, I like the raise there to get the regular out, and you've got a decent top pair hand that'll do well enough that you can play it out of position against this guy. Okay, lower right. Interesting situation. You raise, I guess it's a cutoff with ace king. You get called by this regular in the big blind. He folds the steal, I believe that's, yeah. He folds the steal 74% of the time. Even though this board is like pretty coordinated, it's his range doesn't hit very much. Not much of his range hits it. Like, you know, a guy that's tight and it's folding to over 70% of steals, like his range is very like Broadway ace-x heavy. So, you know, even though this would be like a bad board to see bet against a lot of fish, you know, this guy will probably be folding quite a bit on this board. So, in a situation where you can't, you know, really just sit there and call bets with an ace high, you know, I think it's plenty profitable just to see bet there. I think it's okay versus that particular opponent. Against a lot of opponents, yeah, I'm not gonna bet there. And looking at his stat, like he's got a 50% fold to see bet, which is pretty normal. But I'd pay a lot more attention to the situation than his fold to see bet stat, because there's, you know, his fold to see bet is gonna like fluctuate a ton based on the situation. And in this situation, it's not like, you know, this guy is just gonna call you with an ace high on this board. Like, it's just not gonna happen. Not that that would necessarily be the worst thing, but you know, point being, it's still going to be a very profitable c bet, and so we can lock him out from just you know, betting us off the best hand with like random stuff that missed the board. So I like betting there. Okay, and another weird spot, like when this regular min donks into on the turn, like you know, that's a very strange thing for a regular to do. It's hard to imagine what his range could be. You know, maybe he misclicked. I don't know. You know, if he had made a like a regular bet, like, it's a situation where we're still probably missing, it's missing enough of his range where you could probably raise, like, it's not like you represent nothing. Like, there are a lot of hands a jack could have hit, so even if you made a regular bet, it might be okay to raise, you know, it might be better than calling. But when he makes this like baby bet, you know, I don't know what it means, but raising is probably okay. Like, it seems like if he had a value hand, like he's probably not betting 50 cents with it. So, you know, the only reason I could think that he would do that on purpose maybe would be to induce, but I'm still not like that's so rare for someone to really think that way that you know, I think raising there is fine. I don't want to just call with ace high even though you get good odds. And he thinks for a while and folds. I'm not really sure what to make of that. You know, if he was a fish, you could say, well, he just had some sort of weak hand or error or whatever. Although a fish would have actually called with a lot of weak hands, but it's hard to tell exactly what he's thinking there. Okay. Top left, and by the way, we just folded fives on the upper right, which is fine because the guy only has $18. So even though he min raised, that's all right. Plus, you've got guys behind you that are fairly aggro. Anyway, this pocket 10's hand that you're about to raise to 250, like I'm definitely raising much bigger than that there, out of position versus four guys. There's already two in the pot. I'm making that at least like, three would be the very minimum. Probably more like 350. Looks good. I think 250 is just too small when you're out of position versus a bunch of guys. And probably misses value versus that 59-19 guy too. He's probably not going to care a whole lot. Okay. It gets really weird when this guy is like 17-10 so far, like over limp min raises us. With this money in the pot and those guys all being short stacked though, I'm just getting it in here. Like, even though the guy's tight and limp raises are typically like really strong ranges, like I'm downgrading that range a ton when the guy over limps. Like people are so much less likely to have like aces and kings and do the little limp raise thing when there's somebody already in the pot, because they're just like way more likely to get action, and even the dumbest of fish just kind of like intuitively knows that. So like tens is strong enough versus his range, especially. I mean, you've got like this 59-19 guy has put in $6. Like that guy is just pretty much, his range is toast against your 10s. So, and the 17-10 guy's range is going to be like kind of random and weird. There's another 250 dead from this other guy. Everybody's short, so it's not like it's like a disaster. The occasional times that you do get it in and dominate it, but like I'm just never giving someone as much credit when they over limp. Even though typically limp raising is fairly strong. So I'm just jamming in. There's already $17 in the pot. You have a strong hand. There's, fish galore. Whatever. Just shove that in. And we call, and super fishy guy goes all in. We fold. The guy called the original, like the limp raising guy had ace king. And some other, the other guy put in $6 with ace jack. His second pair is called, whatever. So yeah, definitely like pretty fishy on everyone's part there. And it looks like the fish on the upper left table is just like he got almost stacked, so he's just shoving in now. And there he goes again. So that got a call with king 2. But apparently he knew what he was doing. Oh, you got a reg that opens under the gun. Yeah. We've got ace king is fold to 3 bet 69%, which is a little low. I think he's aggressive enough and maybe stubborn enough that yeah, I don't mind 3 betting there. A lot of guys I'm just calling there against though. This King 10 looks like he's going to 3-bet him. I don't like that. The guy's been passive so far. He looks like kind of a fish. I just think you're going to get called a bunch of raise there, so I'm not loving life with the King 10. And it looks like he changed his mind, so that's good. In this board with the King 9 suited in the lower left, like, you know, probably hits this type guy's range a lot. But we have enough equity of our own, you know, a gut shot and overcard, backdoor flush draw. You know, c-betting there is going to be fun. On the first table, guy raises on the button. We call it a blind with an ace-jack. You know, he's got a 69% c-bet. But I would imagine, like, in this case, the c-bet is he's going to be c-betting a lot more than 69% of his range. His steal is pretty high, I think. Yeah, 54%. You know, I think this board just misses enough of his range. And you can represent some things here. I mean, you can have, you know, ace, queen, 5, 7s. You can have, you know, the nut flush draw, which, you know, he wouldn't assume you'd ever fold. There are a lot of different draws, which, you know, if he just has nothing, which is what he has with a really big percent of his range, he probably just folds. So, like, even though your equity isn't super when he continues, you just have an overcard and a crappy backdoor flush draw. Like, I think he folds enough there that you can probably fold it off the checkers. I imagine he's betting there, you know, with all of his air. You know, it's not exactly a board that is that scary for him versus your range. Okay, I'm probably going to wrap this puppy up. Try and keep him about 40 minutes since I got a bunch of these to do. This one's been a little different than the other ones. The other ones are, you know, quite a few spots where, you know, I'd say the most common thing was people, you know, weren't being aggressive enough and were missing a lot of spots. You know, in this one, I think maybe we were a little over aggressive in some spots where it just kind of wasn't there, and it was probably like a bit minus EV. So, you know, that might be something to think about in the future. Alright, hope you guys like the video. If you'd like to have your own poker video reviewed for free, check out the upload tab on my Facebook fan page. If you're interested in personal coaching or have suggestions for future content for the site, email me at opensourcepoker@gmail.com.